Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to take just a minute to ask you, Professor Weissman, some questions. Clearly, well, I don't want to say clearly, but I think there's pretty unanimous agreement that individuals who've been convicted of a serious crime and who are not U.S. citizens should be deported, apprehended and deported. That's provided for in law. And unfortunately, even though we have directed ICE to do that repeatedly, given them, a huge increase in funding to do that, there's no way the local police can do that. That's a federal government function, and no matter how much money we give ICE and how many times we tell them to go to states and localities to pick up individuals who've been convicted of serious offenses after the sentences are served, they don't actually perform that function in a reliable way. So that's something that I think needs to be stated. But I think what there is disagreement about is, having noted that we all agree, or I think all of us do agree on that, whether it is appropriate to round up everybody who in sight because of their race, which it sounds like is happening in North Carolina. I was struck by your testimony on page 7 that the majority of the undocumented immigrants in the 287G program were caught up. I think you said 83% of the immigrants arrested by Gaston County were charged with traffic violations, and also talking about checkpoints in front of churches that were frequented by Latinos because the mass was in Spanish. Is that, do you think that's a lawful use or a proper use of 287G?
I don't think it's a lawful use. I think that when we talk about 287G and upholding the law, there are some standards. The statute requires that local law enforcement officers know federal law, and so some of these blatant aspects of racial profiling are contrary to federal law, our Constitution, our case law, state law as well. So I think not only is it a contravention of the law, but it actually undermines what the ultimate purpose might have been about 287G. And that is to say, we are pulling local law enforcement resources into a program and really away from their primary function. And I am concerned that, for example, DUI is something that the local law enforcement must first and foremost handle. And if they're now swept into checkpoints in front of churches and the flea market where families shop on Saturday, and traffic offenses, and filling out federal forms and requesting detainers, they will not do their job. Their job is local law enforcement. I'm concerned that the failure to uphold the way this program should be operated in terms of the four corners of the contracts, we haven't talked about this today. This program is supposed to be operated according to a contract with local law enforcement and federal agencies, and there has been very little compliance with that contract. We know that because of the GAO study that was submitted last month. So we have a program that's been somewhat derailed, and it doesn't allow local law enforcement to do their task.
Let me ask you, for example, not that this has always happened, but it's just by directive supposed to happen. When ICE, the federal agency, enters into an enforcement area and they find parents, they are supposed to determine that there's somebody to look after minor children before they remove the parents. And I was struck by your testimony about an incident in June in, is it Alamance County, where, can you describe that?
Yes, there was a vehicle that was pulled over, a woman and a man and children in the back of the car, and it was late at night. It was a mother and her children and a male passenger who was helping her drive up to Maryland, and they were going to see the children's father. She was pulled over. It was determined that she was not documented. Although she told the law enforcement officer that the male passenger was not a relative and not suitable to be the caretaker for the child, the police left the children with this person who ultimately left the car, and the children were left on the side of the road for a number of hours.
Well, that is something that, I mean, certainly no one would be for that. But it directly contradicts what the ICE is supposed to do, and it sounds like the local police either haven't been trained or didn't get the memo about the protocols. But I see, and I don't want to take advantage since I'm chairing, that my time has expired. So I am going to stop these questions, and we do have a second panel. So I will thank every one of you for being here today, for your testimony. I will note that the committee record is open for 5 days. We may have additional questions for you, and if we do, we will send them to you, and if that should occur, we would request that you respond to the written questions. And again, thank you, each one of you, very much for your presence here today.